My name's Dominic, and I'm going to show you how to do a barbell back squat and fix anything that could ever go wrong with it. I'm going to put timestamps in the description if you're looking for anything specific, but I would watch the whole video because there might be things in here you didn't know you needed. First thing you got to look for is make sure that the rack is set to the right height so that you can just walk right out and walk right in when you unrack the bar. No need to go on the toes or anything like that. Next, make sure that the guards are set to the right height. If you bail out and the guards are too low, it doesn't do anything. The bar is still going to fall on you. And make sure that the guards are low enough so you can get full depth on the squat. You don't want to cheat yourself either. So what you could do to find the right height is just do a couple warm-up squats without the bar and look in the mirror and make sure that where the bar would sit is going to be a good spot for you to put the guardrails. You should be able to hit full depth and still have a couple inches of room. Now, everyone's squat is going to look different depending on their anatomy, their femur length, their hip socket depth. Some people might be more hinged over, some people might be more upright, and some people might have a wider or more narrow stance, feet turned inward or outward. And here's how you're going to find out which one is best for you. Honestly, the most fun way and simplest way is just to jump and land in a squat. And wherever your legs land, whatever width and orientation, that's probably your best squat stance to get depth. As far as how low to go, you want to go as low as you can without your butt tucking underneath you at the very bottom. This is called a butt wink. So while you're in this bottomed out position, you're just going to stand up just enough so you can extend your back into that neutral spine position again. If you can't do this without falling over or losing your balance, go ahead and grab onto a bar or a pole or something in front of you, and you can use that to help pull yourself up out of that position a little bit until you get better at it. Some people won't be able to achieve a squat this deep just based on their anatomy, and that's alright. Don't try to go any deeper and have your heels lift off the ground. If the lowest you can go is having your thighs parallel to the ground, that's okay. Next is, where do you put the bar on your back? So there's two places. You can either do what's called a high bar squat or a low bar squat. And in a high bar squat like this one, what you want to do is put it on your traps. So you need to squeeze your back muscles together a little bit and pull the bar down into you to make what's called a shelf. If you don't make the shelf, the bar just slides off of you. The back's not naturally shaped in a way to hold the bar, so you have to pull your back muscles together like in this video. See how I squeeze them together, and now there's something for me to put the bar on my back. You typically want to do this one if you have shorter legs, do Olympic lifting, or want to get below parallel on the squat. The second way to put the bar is the low bar squat, and that's going to rest on the rear delts. It's actually going to be on the shoulders. Because the bar is behind you or lower on your back more, you're going to have to lean forward a little bit more. So this one's a little bit more hingy. People with longer legs usually like this one better. It's harder to get super low with this form, and by super low I mean having your femur below parallel to the ground, but having it just parallel is perfectly fine. That's full range of motion. The low bar also uses more posterior chain, glutes, back, hamstrings, so you can actually load more overall weight, but you also use less quads, so it depends on what you want to use it for. So what you just saw right there was a full depth high bar squat, and you're saying that might be pretty low. Do I have to go that low? No. And if, like in the full depth squat stretch, you're having the butt wink like I am right here where the back tucks underneath, you only want to actually go as low as you can with a straight back. If you find this is happening to you, you're probably actually a little too upright, so try leaning over a little bit before you come down for the squat. Just don't lean over too much, or you end up doing what's called a good morning, where you straighten your legs out and keep your chest down. In a good squat, the chest and the butt should rise up at the same time. So whatever angle you're leaning at when you start the squat, you should get down to the bottom and come up with that same amount of forward lean. So if you're trying all this stuff and you still can't get your femurs parallel to the ground, try grabbing some little plates like this and elevating your heels when you do the squat. In order to get deeper on the squat, what has to happen is the knees have to move over the toes, and if your calves are too tight, your body just won't let that happen. So elevating your heels will let you get a little bit extra range of motion. If elevating your heels helped you get lower on the squat, then your problem is that you have tight calves, mainly the lower calf, which is called the soleus. You can stretch it out by putting your foot up on a box and pushing your knee as far forward over your toes as you can without your heel lifting up in the back. You can use a weight or a kettlebell to help push your knee down if you can't get that far stretch on your own. If you don't have a box or anything to put your foot up on, you can do this one on the ground. Just put the leg you're trying to stretch behind you, lean forward up against the wall, keeping your heel down, keeping that foot facing forward, and then go ahead and try to bend that knee over that toe as far as you can. Foam rolling your calves can also get you some extra ankle mobility. Go ahead and grab a foam roller, put your calf on it, lift your butt up off the ground so you have more weight on the foam roller, and then explore around, find spots that are tender, and then stay on those spots and then grind them out slowly. If elevating your heels didn't let you get lower in the squat, then the problem is probably your hip flexors. Your hip flexors connect your pelvis and your leg and are responsible for bringing your leg up in front of you. So if you have tight hip flexors, your pelvis might actually be getting dragged down towards your leg and making you lean forward excessively. Too much forward lean can rob you of your depth and make you off balance, so here's how we stretch your hip flexors. On the leg where the knee is on the ground, squeeze your glute and tuck your pelvis under you. You should already be feeling a stretch at this point, but if you want even more, lift that same side arm, reach over your head, and lean over to that side. Make sure you're still squeezing the glutes and keeping yourself in posterior pelvic tilt. Now, if you feel the squat a lot in your low back, you might be arching a bunch when you do the squat like this. A lot of people think you need to be looking at yourself in the mirror when you do the squat. And you tilting your head up actually makes you arch your back, and you could feel a lot of low back tension if you do this. So think of your head and your spine as one piece. So as you tilt your torso forward, you're actually going to end up looking down a little bit. You're not going to be looking straight at the floor, but you're not going to be looking forward. You're going to be looking towards maybe the bottom of the mirror. A lot of times when you squat like this, you think, I need to turn my back on and extend it so it doesn't round when I squat. But doing too much of this actually puts you in hyperextension, not neutral spine. So you want to do a little bit of an ab crunch. See how my ribs are sticking out? I pull them down with my stomach muscles. Now I have a little bit of a forward lean and a more flat back. If you're doing all of this right, you should be able to film your squat from the side and see the barbell going straight up and down. It shouldn't be going too far forward or too far back. It should be going right down the middle. See here, I slow it down a little bit. And even if you don't go below parallel, even if you're just hitting parallel just like that, as long as you're going straight up and down, you're doing all right. Now, if you have wrist or elbow pain while you're squatting, you might even think, how is this even happening? What's probably going on is that you don't have enough external rotation to properly get a full grip on the bar. Before we worry about external rotation, we got to make sure our lats are flexible enough to put our shoulders in the right position. Find a doorway or a beam and go ahead and reach the arm that's on the far side over your head and towards the beam, as well as stepping your far leg back behind you. You could change how much you lean and how much you twist to even stretch your hip flexor as well. Here's another one you can do. You're going to get on all fours, keep your head down, put your arm in front of you, and you're going to stretch your lat this way. Just make sure to keep your stomach muscles on and crunched and get some posterior tilt with your pelvis so you can get more focus on the lat and less on the low back. If you don't have lat tightness, then your focuses should be on external rotation and upward scapular mobility. One exercise I like to use to warm up the rotator cuff so you can get a little more external rotation is to push this foam roller into a wall and at the same time use a resistance band and pull your wrists over your elbows. You want to try to have your forearms as vertical as they can. I'm going to push into the wall so it ends up rounding and protracting my back, and then I'm going to tuck my pelvis underneath so I don't have a back arch. I'm trying to keep the external rotation on the band while reaching overhead without compensating with my low back. If that didn't seem to help you grip the bar better on the squat, you could try these. Put your arms in a 90-degree angle, kind of like a field goal position, and lift your forearms up and try to get them parallel to the ground. Try not to let your hands dip forward. Now, if you can do all these pretty easily and you're still having trouble gripping the bar on the squat, then the last thing you probably need is some upward rotation of the scapula. You need to learn how to activate your lower traps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay flat. I'm going to start with my hands by my side, palms up. I'm going to do like a little snow angel motion, bring them out to the side. And as I get to the middle, I'm going to turn my thumbs upwards by rotating the base of my arm that's connected to my body. I'm going to show the ground my armpits. It's going to feel like I'm working a muscle right underneath the shoulder blades. That's going to be your lower traps and some of your lats. Now, the reason I went over shoulders so much in the squat video is because sometimes that could be what's responsible for you twisting during the squat. If you look in the mirror, the bar's going all over the place, but it's not my lower body that's the problem, it's the upper body. If I can't get a full grip on the bar can go wherever it wants. But even if I can get a full grip, but I'm not mobile enough to, I'm going to have to bend and arch my back in certain ways so I can get a full grip on the bar, and that's going to steer me all over the place. You might not have a crooked back or a lack of core strength or anything. You might just need to stretch your shoulders. If you're shifting sideways as you're coming up, or if you notice that your pelvis is actually tilted sideways as you're coming up, then you might have some mobility or strength restrictions in the glutes. If you have one glute that's weaker than the other, it's going to rely more on the other side and shift over to it to help get you through the movement. If you have one side that's more restricted than the other, your back is going to start changing position and you're going to rely more on that, which could help tilt the pelvis. To help stretch your hips out, we're going to do this standing pigeon stretch. Just find a box that's about hip height and then just cross your leg on top of it and reach forward. If you're a little more advanced, you can do this on the ground and just straighten your back leg out behind you. And when you're doing this stretch, you want to try to get the leg in front of you as horizontal as it can be. But for some people, this might be a little too harsh. So go ahead and just bend that knee as much as you need to, and eventually go ahead and work up to the full horizontal leg. If you can't shift your body weight over your back leg just yet, maybe just stick to the standing one until you're a little more mobile. Another good stretch for the outside of the hip or the gluteus medius is called the airplane. What you're going to do is grab onto something in front of you for balance, and you're going to get as horizontal as you can on one leg and tilt that far hip down, and you're going to stretch the hip on the standing side. If you need to strengthen the gluteus medius, you're going to do that same stretch, but now you're going to contract the stretched side, and it's going to rotate your body, so now you're facing the opposite way. Do 10 or so reps of this, and you'll feel a glute burn on the leg that's still on the ground. Another way to strengthen the side of your hip is to do side planks with a band-resisted clamshell. Now, an exercise that strengthens the glute medius that carries more over into other exercises is doing a back lunge with weight just on one side. Hold the weight on the same side that you're stepping back on and do your best to keep your body and torso upright, and you'll feel your glute medius working on your opposite side. Now, if you're looking to strengthen the main part of the glute, the gluteus maximus, the part that's responsible for actually extending your hip, then here's something that you could try. We're going to do single leg glute bridges, so make sure that your back is flattened out and you are lifting your body up with just your glutes. Go ahead and straighten one leg out, and with the leg that's still on the ground, you're going to squeeze that glute to lift your body up. Now, if you're feeling on that leg more hamstring or quad activation, then you probably found the side where your glute is weak. If you're trying to feel more glutes and less hamstring and quad, think lift the hips up instead of push down into the ground to lift the hips up. Thinking that way still doesn't do it, try either scooting your foot farther away from you or closer to you. Now let's look at the squat from the front. One of the main issues you'll probably see if you're looking at yourself in the mirror is the legs caving inward like this. Honestly, one of the best ways to fix it is just to be aware that it happens and don't let it happen when you do the squat. How you want to prep for this is before you even descend in the squat while you're still standing, think of screwing your leg into the ground. I'm trying to imagine opening a jar with my feet. So I'm pressing down into the ground and I'm externally rotating, which lifts my arch up off the ground and also engages my glutes. Now, a warm-up I like to do before I squat is grab a band, put it around my legs, and I'm going to open my legs up so that my knees rotate over my feet, and I'm going to do these banded diagonal walks. I'm going to do 8 forward and then 8 going backwards. And then I'm going to do 8 going left and then 8 going right. Just make sure when you do these that you're keeping that external rotation and keeping the knees pushing out into the band. Feel that doing a round or 2 of these gets my body used to that sensation of resisting the inward collapse with my knees. Also use it to help you practice keeping your arches from collapsing in your feet. Your knees are a hinge joint, so they can only really move one way. So if there's a lot of movement and instability in the knee, then you need to look at either the hip or the foot. You want to think of lifting the arches up from within the foot, not just by rotating your weight to the outsides of your feet. Now, if at the bottom of the squat, it feels like it's too tight to keep your legs open, then you have tight adductors or inner thigh muscles. Stretching these can also help you get more depth, as you'll be able to open your legs up and have more room for your torso to descend. To stretch your adductors, we're going to do groin rocks. We're going to kneel on the ground, straighten one leg out to the side, and with the inside of that straightened out leg, push that foot into the ground. While applying force into the ground, slowly rock your body forward and backward. To get the most out of this stretch, make sure that the leg that's bent is also out to the side, and make sure that that leg does not rotate inward. Now, if you feel like you have too much external rotation and you find it difficult to actually keep your knees in when you squat, then you probably have tight outer calves. All you really need to do for this one is foam roll, focusing mainly on the outsides of your calves and the normal calf stretches that we did earlier. Tight glutes could also be a factor, but it's not that common. You could try foam rolling them to see if it helps, especially if you haven't done it before, because I think it feels great. If you're squatting and you can feel your heels or toes coming up off the ground and you feel it's not a mobility restriction, it's more of a balance issue, just take your shoes off. Most people think running shoes are going to be good for weightlifting because they're both forms of exercise, but running shoes are made for high impact and they have more cushion and padding, so you're actually not as stable. You want to be more rooted to the ground and have more of a flatter surface. A lot of shoes also tend to be very narrow and they bunch your toes together, so you can't spread your feet apart to have a wider base. A lot of the time, doing your leg exercises barefoot pretty much fixes these problems instantly. If you have a pinching pain in the front of your hip when you squat, that's going to be some sort of hip impingement. What we want to do for that is called a banded hip distraction. What the point of this is it's actually pulling the femur away from the pelvis and creating a little bit more opening in that hip joint so it's not catching on anything. Loop a resistance band through on something stable and then step that impinged leg through the opening of the band. Bring the band up to your groin, get down in a kneeling position, get some distance away from the band so there's tension on it, and then with your hand push that knee into internal rotation into the position that would normally recreate the pinching pain. Do this about 10 times. The 90-90 is one of the best hip mobility drills that you could do. Sit on the ground, make two 90-degree angles with your legs, and starting with the leg that's in internal rotation, open that leg up and then switch over so the legs are flipped onto the other side. Doing this a couple times will help reveal to you any sort of restrictions that you have on either side. Make sure after each time you go over that you readjust your legs so you're back in a 90-degree position again. This will ensure that you're getting a consistent range of motion on every time you do the exercise. If you feel that you can't flip over while keeping the 90, you can lean back a little bit and support yourself with your hands to give yourself a little bit more room to switch your legs over. Once you feel that you don't need your hands for support, you can go ahead and start picking a side and start leaning forward and stretching into that internal rotation. This will increase your awareness and capacity in that position, and you'll be able to handle internal rotation a little bit better. For some people, the hardest part of the squat is actually just the bar sitting on their back. They're either not strong enough to extend their upper back, or they have a Dauerger's hump or hyperkyphosis and they can't straighten their back out all the way. If you have more of that rounded posture, then just laying over an exercise ball like this is a good way to open your mid-back up. The Hollywood stretch is also a good way to get some mid-back rotation. Just make sure you're lifting your head and chest up so you're not leaning forward when you do the stretch. Now, if you need to strengthen your mid-back, you're going to want to do a Superman hold, but with your arms by the side of you instead of in front of you. Externally rotate your arms so your thumbs are up, pinch your shoulder blades together, keep your chin tucked, and lift and hold. Now you could just work the retraction and only focus on pinching the shoulder blades together like this, but I find that if you need this, you probably have shoulders that are rotated forward as well, so it would be good to get some of this external rotation in. Again, you want to make sure your chin is tucked so you know you're lifting your shoulders up, not just by lifting your head and extending your spine. During the squat, we don't want to be looking forward too much. We want to realize that lifting the head up and pinching the shoulders back are two independent movements. We're not looking straight down like this, and we're not looking right at ourselves in the mirror. We're somewhere in between so we can avoid that hyperextension of the neck. Last thing we need to address is your breathing, which will increase your performance on the squat and help keep your low back safe and pain-free. Most exercises you want to breathe in on the easy part and exhale on the harder part. In this case, that would be breathe in on the way down and exhale as you're pushing back up. That's okay if you're doing weight that's not too intense, but the heavier and more intense the weight gets, the more you want to use the Valsalva maneuver. The Valsalva maneuver lets you create a lot of intra-abdominal pressure by not letting any air out and keeping your spine rigid. Kind of how like an unopened soda can is real hard to break versus if there was nothing in it. At the top of the lift, before you go down, breathe in real deep, get 360-degree expansion of the torso, then brace, then go ahead and do the squat. Make sure not to let the air out until you get past the sticking point or until you finish the whole lift. And if you're doing more than one rep, please remember to breathe again before you go for the next one. If you have high blood pressure, any heart or artery conditions, or anything else that puts you at increased risk of heart attack or stroke, don't perform this maneuver. Ask a doctor before trying it out. And that's going to be it for the squat, everybody. If you found this helpful, go ahead and leave me a like and subscribe for future videos. I'll see you guys later.